The moment between life and death lasted exactly 4 seconds, but the judgment that followed stretched into an eternity that nearly destroyed an innocent man. The evening air hung thick with humidity as the luxury beachside resort buzzed with vacation energy. Poolside lights cast dancing reflections across the turquoise water, creating an almost dreamlike atmosphere. Guests lounged on cushioned chairs, cocktails in hand, while soft music drifted from hidden speakers. Everything seemed perfect, serene, untouched by the darkness that was about to unfold. Elena Morrison had been swimming laps, her blonde hair streaming behind her as she cut through the water with practiced strokes. At 25, she was a confident swimmer, or so she thought, but confidence means nothing when a sudden cramp seizes your calf muscle with the grip of a steel trap. One moment she was gliding smoothly, the next her leg locked up, sending shooting pain through her entire body. She gasped, inhaling water instead of air, and suddenly the pool that had felt so welcoming became a liquid tomb. Her arms thrashed wildly at first, instinct driving her to fight. But panic consumes oxygen faster than exertion, and within seconds her movements grew sluggish. The surface shimmered above her, impossibly far away despite being mere feet overhead. Water filled her mouth, her nose, her lungs screaming for air that wouldn't come. Her vision began to darken at the edges, and her flailing arms went limp, surrendering to the pull of gravity and exhaustion. Darius Bennett had been on duty for 6 hours, his eyes constantly scanning the pool area with trained vigilance. At 23, he'd been a certified lifeguard for 5 years, had completed advanced water rescue training, and had saved 7 lives in his career. He knew the signs, knew them like he knew his own heartbeat. When he saw Elena's arms stop moving, saw her body begin to sink, his mind didn't hesitate even for a fraction of a second. He launched himself from the elevated lifeguard chair, his athletic frame cutting through the air before plunging into the water with barely a splash. Years of training had made his movements fluid, automatic. He reached Elena in 3 powerful strokes, his hands finding her torso as he positioned himself behind her. Using the cross-chest carry technique, he wrapped one arm across her chest, supporting her head above water while using his free arm to propel them both toward the pool's edge. But rescue techniques, when viewed by untrained eyes, can look disturbingly intimate. From the pool deck, Jacob Warren had been nursing his 3rd whiskey of the evening, his eyes glossy from alcohol and prejudice. When he saw Darius, a young black man, with his arms wrapped around Elena, a young white woman, something ugly stirred in his chest. He didn't see a lifeguard performing his duty. He saw something else entirely, something his biases had taught him to see. "Get away from her!" The words exploded from Jacob's mouth like bullets, sharp and violent. He lurched forward, nearly spilling his drink, his face contorted with rage. "What do you think you're doing to that woman?" Other guests turned, their attention snapping to the scene unfolding before them. In the age of viral videos and instant judgment, phones emerged from pockets and purses like weapons, cameras already recording before anyone understood what they were actually witnessing. Darius continued his rescue, hauling Elena to the pool's shallow end where he could get better leverage. Her body was dead weight in his arms, her face pale as porcelain, lips tinged with blue. Water streamed from her mouth as he carefully positioned her at the pool's edge, turning her onto her side to help drain her airways. "Someone call security!" a woman shrieked from somewhere in the gathering crowd. "He's attacking her!" The words hit Darius like physical blows, but he couldn't stop, couldn't defend himself. Elena's life hung in the balance, and every second counted. He delivered firm back blows between her shoulder blades, just as his Red Cross certification had taught him, watching desperately for signs of consciousness. Elena's body convulsed suddenly, a violent cough racking her frame as water exploded from her lungs. She gasped, sucking in precious air, her eyes flying open in confusion and terror. But even as she began to breathe again, even as color slowly returned to her face, The crowd's anger only intensified. "I saw the whole thing," Jacob slurred, pointing an accusatory finger. "He was groping her, holding her down in the water. I saw it with my own eyes." Resort security arrived within minutes, two burly guards in crisp uniforms pushing through the crowd. The lead guard, a man named Richard Peterson with 20 years on the job, took one look at the scene. A black lifeguard crouched over a white woman, both soaking wet, her lying on the ground, and his expression hardened. "Step back from her. Now." Peterson's hand moved to the radio clipped to his belt, his posture aggressive, confrontational. Darius raised his hand slowly, his heart hammering against his ribs. She was drowning. "I'm a lifeguard. I pulled her out. Check the security cameras." "Save it," Peterson cut him off. "We've got multiple witnesses saying otherwise." Elena tried to speak, her voice a raw croak, damaged by pool water and coughing. "No, wait. But her words were lost in the chaos, drowned out by the crowd's murmurs and accusations. "Typical," a woman whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. "They give these people jobs, and look what happens. Can't trust them around white women." The racist undertone wasn't even subtle, yet no one challenged it. Instead, heads nodded in agreement, phones continued recording, and the narrative solidified like concrete. A black man had assaulted a white woman at a resort pool, and justice needed to be served. Darius felt something inside him crack, not from anger but from exhaustion. How many times had he proven himself? How many certifications? How many lives saved? How many years of service meant nothing in the face of skin-deep judgment? He'd faced racism before, subtle microaggressions, suspicious glances, locked car doors as he walked by, but this was different. This was his competence, his character, his entire identity being reduced to a stereotype in real time. As Peterson gripped his arm, preparing to haul him away, Darius caught sight of something floating in the pool water. His mother's bracelet, a simple woven band she'd made for him before cancer took her 3 years ago, had slipped off during the rescue. It drifted lazily across the pool's surface, the only physical connection he had left to the woman who'd raised him alone, worked 3 jobs to put him through school, taught him to be strong and compassionate, despite a world determined to see him as neither. "Can I—" He started gesturing toward the water, but Peterson's grip tightened. "You're not going anywhere near that pool. You're done here." Elena had finally managed to sit up, her chest heaving with each breath, water still dripping from her hair and clothes. Her mind was clearing from the fog of near death, and with clarity came horror at what she was witnessing. This man, this lifeguard, had saved her life, and now he was being treated like a criminal. "Stop!" she tried again, her voice stronger this time, but still not strong enough to cut through the noise. Jacob leaned in close to Darius, his breath reeking of whiskey and hatred. "Thought you could take advantage while she was helpless, didn't you? Figured no one would believe her if she said anything." The accusation was so vile, so completely divorced from reality, that Darius couldn't even formulate a response. He just stared, his jaw clenched, every muscle in his body taut with restraint. One wrong move, one angry word, and he knew it would only confirm their worst assumptions. The crowd had grown larger now, drawn by the commotion like moths to flame. Some held their phones high, capturing every moment for social media. Others whispered behind cupped hands, spreading rumors that mutated with each retelling. The story being written was simple, sensational, and entirely false, but truth had never stopped a good narrative from going viral. Peterson began pulling Darius toward the resort's security office, and that's when Elena found her voice, truly found it, pulling air from deep in her lungs and channeling every ounce of strength she had left. "Stop!" The word cut through the chaos like a knife through silk, sharp and undeniable. "Stop right now!" The crowd fell silent, all eyes turning to her. She used the pool's edge to pull herself fully upright, water streaming from her clothes, her legs shaking but holding steady. When she spoke again, each word was deliberate, clear, impossible to misunderstand. "That man saved my life. I was drowning. My leg cramped. I went under, and I couldn't get back up. He jumped in and pulled me out. He performed water rescue techniques exactly as they're supposed to be done. Without him, I would be dead right now." Jacob's face flushed an even deeper red. "Now wait a minute. You saw what you wanted to see." Elena cut him off, her voice gaining strength with each word. "You saw a black man touching a white woman, and your racism filled in the rest. But what actually happened is that a trained professional did his job and saved someone's life while you stood there with your drink and judged him." The silence that followed was profound, heavy with shame and realization. Faces that had been twisted with anger now showed confusion, embarrassment, the slow dawning of terrible understanding. "The security cameras," Elena continued, turning to Peterson. "Check the security cameras. They record everything at this pool, right? Check them. You'll see exactly what I'm telling you." Peterson's grip on Darius's arm loosened slightly. "We can review the footage, but then do it. Now." Elena's tone left no room for argument. "Because if you haul this man away based on nothing but racist assumptions and mob mentality, I will sue this resort, you personally, and everyone who participated in this lynching attempt." The word lynching hit like a thunderclap. Several people in the crowd took actual steps backward, as if trying to physically distance themselves from what they'd been part of. Phones were hastily lowered and pocketed. It took Peterson 15 minutes to pull up the security footage on his tablet, though it felt like hours. The crowd remained, transfixed, unable to leave even though many clearly wanted to. Eleanor stayed close to Darius, positioning herself between him and the others, her presence a shield against further accusations. When the video played, it told an undeniable story. There was Elena, swimming laps. There was the moment her body seized, the sudden stop, the frantic thrashing that quickly gave way to stillness. There was Darius, launching himself from his chair the instant he registered danger, his dive precise and professional. The underwater cameras captured his approach, his careful positioning, the textbook cross-chest carry. The angle showed his face, focused, determined, worried, the expression of someone fighting to save a life, not harm it. The footage showed him pulling her to the edge, turning her to drain her airways, delivering back blows to clear her lungs. Every movement matched standard water rescue protocols. There was nothing sexual, nothing violent, nothing remotely resembling an assault. It was simply a skilled lifeguard doing exactly what lifeguards are trained to do. When the video ended, no one spoke. The silence was crushing, suffocating in its shame. Peterson cleared his throat, released Darius's arm completely, and took a step back. I apologize. The witnesses were mistaken." "The witnesses were racist," Elena corrected bluntly. "Let's call it what it was." Jacob had already disappeared into the night, along with several others who'd been most vocal in their accusations. Those who remained couldn't meet Darius's eyes. Elena turned to him fully for the first time since the ordeal began. Up close, she could see how young he was, could see the exhaustion and pain etched into his features. This wasn't the first time he'd faced something like this, she realized. Maybe not this extreme, but the assumption of guilt, the instant judgment, these were familiar wounds. "Thank you," she said simply. "You saved my life." Darius nodded, his throat too tight for words. He looked toward the pool, where his mother's bracelet still floated near the filter intake. "That's important to you," Elena said, following his gaze. It wasn't a question. "My mother made it, before she passed." Without hesitation, Elena walked to the pool's edge and reached down, fishing the bracelet from the water. She held it carefully, reverently, water dripping from the woven threads as she brought it back to him. "Don't let them take this from you," she said, pressing it into his palm. "Don't let them take anything from you." You're a hero, a real one. Not the kind that gets celebrated in movies, but the kind that matters, someone who acts when others just watch. Darius closed his fingers around the bracelet, the familiar texture grounding him, pulling him back from the edge of despair he'd been teetering on. I was just doing my job. You were doing more than that. You were being human in a way most people have forgotten how to be. You saw someone in danger and you helped, knowing there might be consequences, knowing people might not understand. You did it anyway. Peterson stepped forward again, his expression genuinely remorseful now. For what it's worth, your job is secure. More than secure. The resort management will want to recognize your actions properly, and we'll be having some serious conversations with the guests who made false accusations. Will you? Darius asked, and there was no anger in his voice, just bone-deep weariness. Will you really? Or will everyone just pretend this didn't happen, go back to their vacations, and nothing will change? Peterson didn't have an answer, because they both knew the truth. Come morning, most of these people would be on the beach, ordering mimosas, posting sunset photos, their brief brush with their own prejudice forgotten or rationalized away. But Elena wouldn't forget. As she stood there, still dripping, still weak from her near-death experience, she understood something fundamental had shifted in her worldview. She'd always considered herself progressive, open-minded, not racist. But she'd never truly understood the weight of assumptions, the danger of unchecked bias, the way prejudice could turn mercy into crime in the span of seconds. "This happens to you often?" she asked Darius quietly, though she already knew the answer. Not this extreme, but the assumption that I'm dangerous, that I'm up to something, that my presence in certain spaces is threatening. He met her eyes. Yeah. That happens pretty regularly. I'm sorry. You didn't do anything wrong. Neither did you. That's the point. Elena wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the warm night air. Thank you for saving my life. And I'm sorry the cost of doing that was being treated like a criminal. Darius managed a small smile, the first genuine expression he'd shown since the rescue. You stood up for me when no one else would. That matters more than you know. The crowd had fully dispersed now, the show over, everyone eager to distance themselves from their part in the ugly scene. The pool area returned to its previous calm, the water's surface smooth again, reflecting stars and resort lights as if nothing had happened. But something had happened. A man had been willing to risk his own safety, his own reputation, to save a stranger's life. And that act of courage had been twisted into something dark and sinister by people who saw skin color before they saw humanity. The security footage had provided objective truth, but it shouldn't have been necessary. Darius's word, his professionalism, his 5 years of exemplary service should have been enough. Yet they weren't, and everyone involved knew they never would have been. As the night wore on and the resort returned to its manufactured paradise, two people stood at the pool's edge, connected by trauma and truth. Elena Morrison, who'd nearly drowned but lived to tell the story, and Darius Bennett, who'd saved a life only to be accused of assault, who demonstrated the highest form of courage only to be met with the lowest form of prejudice. The moment between life and death had lasted 4 seconds, but the lesson in humanity, in both its nobility and its ugliness, would last forever.